Hello, welcome to Collected Stories. This is Kyra and Dawn. This is an introduction video where we're going to tell you more about ourselves and about our reading journey. I am Kyra. My mom is Dawn.
Hello.
Um, yeah, and I just to tell you more about myself. I am 24. I'm now currently living in San Francisco. I have just moved here this past month, 2 months. No, it's
About a month.
about a month. And that's a little bit about me. I work as a clinical therapist, and in the mental health fields. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Dawn. I currently live in Connecticut. Yes, my daughter has recently moved to San Francisco. We are not happy with this. So I miss my book buddy. We have talked about books for many years and have both grown to like a lot of the same books. But have a difference in genres as well. So we figured this might be fun to do. And it gets us to talk about books. I currently work in marketing for a scholarly publisher that just happens to be owned by Yale University. I always feel weird saying that. It makes me sound like I'm smart or anything, and I am far from that. I do a lot of the creative and email kind of stuff. I have no influence in getting any books published or anything else, so don't even go there, people. But I miss my daughter, and this is a great way for us to chat and talk about books, and it'll be fun. And the world gets to find out what kind of wackos we are.
Wackos indeed. Yeah. I mean, especially growing up as your daughter, I feel like reading has just been something that has been present in our lives, which I didn't realize was not the case in every family. It is certainly like a privilege and an honor for that to be like considered like a pastime that was like pretty common, and I feel like we engaged in it quite often. And I remember, just really enjoying like whimsical, magical books from such a young age, I feel like. Especially with the kind of series that were coming out in like popular fiction at my time of growing up.
Yeah.
Harry Potter was a little bit before my time, but it was still very popular. And then like Percy Jackson and like that series, really loved that series. And all those kind of like dystopian but magical novels is really what got me into reading.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because I'm just thinking about my own experience in reading, of growing up reading. And my mom read a lot, and my dad did too, but I never really read any of their books. I have to say, like, my formative reading was instilled by two family members. My grandmother, who moved into us after my grandfather died, and she loved romance, Harlequin romances, and mysteries, specifically Agatha Christie. So I started off with the romances and realized, like, oh God, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Sorry, nothing against romances. There are some romances out there that I have read still, and I do have enjoyed, but not really my ballywick. But Agatha Christie stuck. And the second person was my oldest brother, Kevin, who read a ton. And a lot of his stuff was science fiction. And that got me, like, I read, I was probably in high school, maybe the end of junior high. And I read Dune. I read the whole Foundation series, or a good portion of the Foundation series that was out at that point by Isaac Asimov. And it was just like, those were the things that just like pulled me in. I mean, and before that, I was really into mystery as well. When I was young, I read like, you won't know any, well, Nancy Drew. You do know Nancy Drew. And then there was this one called the Bobbsey Twins. I grew up on those. So, and I think like with science fiction, a lot of the science fiction, if you look, has a mystery element to it. You got to figure something out, put the
And that's,
puzzle together.
yeah, and that's like kind of what I mean when I say like magical elements to a book. And I don't literally mean every book has to contain some sort of element of what we like classically understand as like magic and fantasy, but some sort of element of like this whimsical like learning, like even in the science fiction books that I've read, and even in the nature and like nonfiction books that I've read by like Bill Bryson, there's like this element of magic, of like unspoken, I don't know, you're just sinking your teeth into it and taking it all in. And it's like this whole fresh perspective. It's like walking through the wardrobe in Narnia, and it's completely new and alive and different and exciting.
Taking over somebody else's life without any consequences, other than if you read scary books, maybe being up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. But and I think, you know, coming into my career as a therapist has also been really enlightening with a background in reading. That's actually something I talked about in one of my interviews for this job that I got. Their question was actually like, what's something that you do for yourself and how does it make you a better therapist? And I said reading. The ability to just be in someone's life, like in their mindset, hearing their thoughts, living through their experiences, and maybe not agreeing, but understanding their choices and their life and its impact is huge. And that's like what empathy is. And I feel like reading is such a shortcut almost to empathy, because if you're reading stories constantly and constantly taking different perspectives other than your own, then it's quite easy in your normal everyday life to extend empathy to a stranger.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your favorite genres?
My favorite genres. I always get like, I don't know, a little like flustered when people ask that.
I know, me too. I'm sorry. And then
I want to say something that makes me sound smart, but that's not true. I love fantasy, and fantasy for me is just so adventurous, and I really like fantasy, high fantasy that is like, I like a strong world building. That for me is huge. And I really love the tropes of like chosen family, found family, ragtag underdogs, like that kind of trope. I find a lot in fantasy. I don't know why. But I really love that theme. And I really like historical novels as well. Like this current series that I'm reading is
that's Jax.
That's her dog. Like this book I'm reading right now, or this series rather, is a fantasy series, but it takes place in ancient Arabic times, and it has elements to their pagan history before Islam took over. So it's really interesting, and you're learning so many new things about it. And similar to like Babel by R.F. Kuang, like it's fantasy, but you're learning so much about it, not just like historical events, but a time period, an atmosphere, something that you can't convey in a history book of these people were living in this with this fear, you know, because you don't always know that based on what events happen. So
yeah, I never thought of what it would all be like before Islam. I mean, I have done like readings of before Christianity hit, like the Great Britons and all the pagans and all that stuff, and like the whole King Arthur thing. But never thought about the Islam. That sounds really interesting.
It is. And even now, later in the book, there is this like river god, I want to say. I don't think they call it a god, a river spirit. And they actually talk to it, and it gives the history of what things were like before. And it's interesting, and there's the element of magic to it too. So I just like adventurous books in general. Like I love like Wild by Cheryl Strayed got me out of a reading slump, and I clung to that book like a life preserver. And I love that. That was like a beautiful adventure. And I like books that are fantasy. I like books that are sci-fi. I like literary fiction a lot. I do think I have like a lot more pickiness when it comes to literary fiction. Some of
Yeah.
it I find can be just snobbish in a way of like, this book is like so awesome. I don't know. I just like, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
read it and I'm like,
I didn't see what it was.
I don't know why.
Why didn't we get everything?
So maybe I'm missing something, but and maybe that my tastes will change as I live and read more and more, but that's currently where I stand. And I will say one last thing.
Yep.
My tastes have changed from having this job. It is emotionally heavier at times, so I do tend to read more adventurous and lighthearted books.
Makes sense.
Just because if I'm dealing with things all day, I don't really want to come home and read a really sad book like A Little Life. I will never read that book because I don't need to.
Yeah. You're living that in your work. Don't bring work home.
Yeah.
I like you, I like sci-fi. I used to read a lot of fantasy when I was like in high school and stuff, back when I was playing D&D. Yes, I'm a geek, people. um, and I got out of it, stopped reading it because it just was like very formulaic, I thought. But I probably wasn't reading maybe the right authors or whatever. And, we didn't have the internet back then to be able to like do the research to find out what book. Sorry, I have a hair on my face. And coming back into it and like reading like Circe and books like that, really like I feel like and The Mere Wife, they're so well written. And maybe it's also because it's from the woman's point of view. There's not very many books from back then that were, and like sci-fi as well, that were written by women for women, the women's perspective. It's just interesting for me to see that point of view. It's just nice now, like to read Becky Chambers and
Chambers.
Huh?
So love Becky Chambers.
Yes.
You like Octavia Butler too?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't know about her back then.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if it wasn't like prominently displayed,
yeah,
you didn't really know. Now it's like, you can search out easily, like through, Goodreads or Storygraph or
the YouTube channel.
Yes, our YouTube channel. We should probably talk about the book we're going to be reading for the end.
July 18th is the debut of The Deep Sky. I do not know how to pronounce this author's name. It is an enthralling sci-fi thriller debut about a mission into deep space that begins with a lethal explosion that leaves the survivors questioning the loyalty of the crew. They left Earth to save humanity. They'll have to save themselves first. I'm not going to read the rest because I kind of like going into a book blind.
Yes.
Usually just a sentence snippet is all I need to be intrigued, and usually if it doesn't intrigue me, then I just don't want to read it anyways. So we're very excited to read this. We're going to read it on our own timelines and then come together without any forethought or planning and just have a sit down conversation about the book. So you can bring your cup of tea or your food, sit down, watch our video, and you'll be like just at the table chatting with us about what you liked about the book, or if you are deciding whether or not to spend your money on the book and you want to get some, feedback or comments about it, this will help you with your purchase. But
and feel free to comment whether you liked it or not. We'll be jumping on here at the end of the month to talk about it then. We'll probably right now we're scheduling to do this twice a month.
Yes.
Like around the 15th and then around the end.
Yes.
And we'll pick like on the end of the month, end of July, we will post what the next book is, and what else we're reading. Follow us on Instagram.